The crime that made detectives doubt everything they knew. The House on Eddington Street. Hit subscribe because this is the one story that'll make you question everything you think you know about justice. It was a quiet morning in the small town of Maple Ridge, the kind of place where nothing ever really happens. Detective Mark Redden had been on the force for 27 years, and after 3 divorces, 12 promotions, and more sleepless nights than he could count, he believed he'd seen it all, until that morning. At 6:42 a.m., a call came through dispatch. Possible homicide, 118 Eddington Street. Mark's partner, rookie detective Lisa Grant, met him outside the address, a small white house with peeling paint, half hidden behind overgrown hedges. The front door was slightly ajar, no forced entry, no sign of robbery. Just the kind of silence that feels wrong. Inside, the house was almost pristine. Everything was in place, except for the living room. There, on a beige carpet, lay the body of a man in his 40s, slumped beside a shattered coffee mug. The coffee hadn't even finished dripping from the counter. Mark crouched down, eyeing the faint trace of something smeared on the victim's wrist. A thin line drawn in red ink. It looked almost deliberate, like a mark left behind on purpose. The victim's name was Aaron Lowell, a school teacher. No enemies, no record. A model citizen, according to everyone who knew him. But then they found the basement door, locked from the outside. Lisa forced it open. The air that came out was stale, cold, and suffocating. And in the corner of that dark basement, they found something that made both of them freeze. A small wooden chair, a set of restraints attached to the arms, and on the wall, photos of Aaron himself, hundreds of them. Each one was taken from outside his own house, through windows, across the street, even from inside his classroom. Every photo had a date written in black marker, neat, deliberate, obsessive. And then came the strangest part. In the final photo, taken the night before, Aaron was standing in front of the same window, holding a piece of paper. Written on it in red ink were 3 words, "I finally understand." The handwriting didn't match his. By noon, the house was swarming with forensic teams. Neighbors said Aaron lived alone. No one had visited in months. But there was one detail everyone mentioned. For the past week, Aaron had been acting strange. He stopped showing up to work, covered his windows, and was seen talking to someone outside his house at night. Someone no one could clearly describe. Lisa stared at the photos again, her voice barely above a whisper. Whoever did this, they wanted him to see it coming. Mark didn't answer. He was focused on the last item taken from the scene, a small flash drive found beneath Aaron's body. When text loaded it up, the screen flickered to life. A single video file, timestamp 1:17 a.m., the night of the murder. Aaron's face appeared on the screen, eyes wide, trembling. He was whispering something, but the audio was faint. The camera shook, like he was holding it himself. Then, he looked directly into the lens and said, "It wasn't supposed to be me." The video cut to black. And behind Mark, Lisa murmured, "Then who was it supposed to be?" Mark turned back toward the basement, where Crime Techs had just uncovered a second chair. Empty, and beside it, another set of restraints, the second chair. By the next morning, Detective Mark Redden couldn't shake the image of that empty chair. It sat in his mind like a puzzle piece that didn't belong. Too deliberate, too staged. The lab results came back early. No fingerprints on the restraints, no trace of DNA other than Aaron Lowell's. The handwriting on the paper, "I finally understand," was still inconclusive. But the ink? It wasn't marker, it was blood. Lisa sat across from Mark at the precinct, coffee untouched. "You think he was forced to write it?" she asked. Mark shook his head slowly. "No. Whoever wrote that wanted us to think he did." The tech team had finished restoring the flash drive video. The faint audio revealed something new. Another voice. A whisper, distorted, almost mocking, right before the recording ended. The words were muffled, but clear enough to make Mark's chest tighten. "Now you know what it feels like." The investigation turned toward Aaron's past. A model teacher, yes. But 5 years ago, he'd been a witness in a hit-and-run case involving a high school student. The driver had never been caught. The victim, a 17-year-old named Caleb Stone, died on impact. His mother, Evelyn Stone, had never recovered. Her grief had turned into anger, then silence. She left town 2 years later, but a background check revealed something chilling. She had returned 3 months ago under her maiden name, and her new address, less than 2 miles from Aaron Lowell's home. Lisa's voice trembled as she read the report aloud. Evelyn worked as a volunteer for the same school district. She would have known him. They pulled up her file photo. A woman in her 40s, eyes hollow but intense, staring straight through the camera as if she could see the person behind it. Mark exhaled. If she's involved, that second chair wasn't for Aaron. It was for her. By the time they reached Ed Evelyn Stone's home, the air outside had turned gray and heavy with snow. The house was quiet, curtains drawn, mailbox overflowing. Mark knocked once, no answer. Twice, still nothing. They entered cautiously. The living room was empty except for a single item on the coffee table, an old cassette recorder next to a note. The note read, "For Detective Redden." Lisa pressed play. A woman's voice filled the room, calm, controlled, broken. "I used to believe justice meant waiting for someone else to fix what was taken from you, but justice doesn't wait, it hunts." The tape clicked. Static filled the silence for a few seconds. Then the woman spoke again. "You all think Aaron was innocent. You think he didn't know, but he was the one driving. He promised he'd tell the truth. He never did." Lisa froze. "She's confessing." Mark wasn't so sure. "Keep listening." The voice grew quieter now, almost whispering. "I wanted him to feel what Caleb felt. Trapped, terrified, waiting for someone to save him. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw the same fear in mine." There was a sharp intake of breath, and then a final line that made the hairs on the back of Mark's neck rise. "You'll find me where he found peace." The tape clicked off. Lisa turned to Mark. "Where he found peace? What does that mean?" Mark didn't answer immediately. His eyes fell on the police photos spread across the table. The basement, the chair, the faint red mark on Aaron's wrist. And then it hit him. Aaron's last vacation photos. A lakeside cabin, quiet, remote, 2 hours north. He'd written about it in his work journal. Mark grabbed his coat. "She's not running, she's waiting." As the snow fell heavier, the detectives sped toward the lake, unaware that they were driving straight into the final act of Evelyn Stone's plan, a trap that would turn their understanding of guilt, grief, and justice completely upside down. The Lake of Truth. The road to Lake Morrow was swallowed by fog. The snowstorm had left the world colorless, a blank sheet of white where the horizon and sky seemed to disappear into one another. Detective Mark Redden gripped the wheel tighter as the headlights cut through the haze, his jaw set, his mind circling the words from the tape. "You'll find me where he found peace." Beside him, Lisa stared out the window, her reflection pale against the glass. "You really think she'd go back there, to the same place he loved?" Mark didn't look away from the road. "That's exactly why she would." The cabin came into view just past the tree line, dark wood against the frozen lake, half buried under snow. No tire tracks, no footprints, just stillness. They parked a few yards away and stepped out into the cold. The air burned with that sharp, biting silence you only hear before something terrible happens. Mark pushed open the cabin door. Inside, a faint glow flickered from a single oil lamp on the table. The room was stripped bare. No furniture except that 2 wooden chairs facing the window. One was empty, the other wasn't. Evelyn Stone sat perfectly still, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She looked almost peaceful, like a ghost that had been waiting too long. Mark raised his voice gently. "Evelyn, it's Detective Redden. You don't have to do this." She turned her head slowly, her face gaunt, eyes glassy with exhaustion. "You finally came." Lisa stepped forward cautiously. "We just want to talk." Evelyn smiled faintly. "That's what Aaron said too." Mark froze. "You talked to him before he died?" Her laugh was quiet, hollow. "He came here first, said he wanted forgiveness, said he couldn't live with what he'd done to my son. But when I saw him, I realized I wasn't the only one haunted." She looked toward the frozen lake. "He said he heard Caleb calling him from the water, night after night." Lisa exchanged a glance with Mark. "You didn't kill him, did you?" Evelyn's voice trembled. "I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But when he begged me to end it, I couldn't. He did it himself." The room fell silent. Mark's heart pounded. "You're saying he took his own life?" She nodded slowly. "He left a note for me, on that flash drive. He wanted me to understand why he never confessed. Said it wasn't just guilt. Said he wasn't driving that night." Mark blinked. "Then who was?" Evelyn turned toward the second chair, the empty one. "You should ask your father, Detective Redden." The words hung in the air like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Mark stepped back, his throat tightening. "What did you say?" She met his eyes, steady now. "It was in the case file, wasn't it? The original report, the first witness who saw the crash. The black sedan that sped away belonged to someone in the department. He changed the plates, buried the evidence. My son died because a detective's son was behind the wheel." Mark's pulse roared in his ears. "That's not possible." Evelyn rose from her chair, her voice calm but cold. "You've been chasing the wrong ghost, Detective. The crime that broke you, it started with your own family." Outside, the wind howled across the frozen lake. By the time backup arrived, the cabin was empty. No Evelyn, no footprints leading away. Only the two chairs, one upright, one knocked over, and a single note pinned to the window frame. It read, "Some truths were never meant to be solved." Mark stood in the doorway, staring at the lake until dawn, the fog dissolving into pale daylight. He didn't move. He didn't speak. Because deep down, he knew. The case wasn't over. It had only just turned personal. And somewhere under the frozen surface of Lake Morrow, the past was waiting to rise again. If you thought this story... It was chilling. The next one will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. Hit subscribe, because some crimes never die.